We've just had four great ambassadors for the ocean to explain just how special the ocean is, just how special the planet is, just how incredible it is for us to be alive at all. When you think that in all of the universe, there's just this little blue speck that is just right for us. And it's taken a long time to make it this way. Think 4.5 billion years of fine-tuning. If we were able to zip back in time, let's say 1 billion years ago, Earth wouldn't be very hospitable for the likes of us. And a lot of the things that we take for granted today simply wouldn't be there. Lots and lots of microbes, but not much else that we would recognize. The really amazing thing is, first of all, I think, how much we have learned in such a short period of time. When Rachel Carson wrote The Sea Around Us, think 1951, there was the feeling that the ocean was so big, so vast, so resilient, there wasn't anything that humans could do to alter its nature. Even Rachel Carson thought that. She recognized and spoke eloquently about the changes that were obvious on the land. But the ocean just seemed so big that you couldn't do much to alter its nature. Well, one of the things that we've learned since then is how much we can alter. Not just the nature of the ocean, the nature of nature, the nature of the whole world is changing owing to our ability to alter the way it works. At the same time that we have learned more about the ocean, again, from the middle of the 20th century right up to the present time, think about what those 50, 60 years ago didn't know about the mountain chains that you just saw on those maps. Maps of the world at the time certainly included the ocean, but just the surface of the ocean. Knowledge of hydrothermal vents, that didn't come about until the late 1970s. The existence of chemosynthesis, little guys in the deep sea that, in the absence of sunlight, no photosynthesis, they take the chemicals and generate whole ecosystems based on their ability to create food out of basic chemicals. We didn't know that there was life in the deepest sea. It wasn't until 1960 that anybody actually got there physically. That's when Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard made the first and so far the only descent, including human beings, to the deepest sea. It isn't just that there are more people on the moon than have been on the moon than in the bottom of the sea. Only 2 have been to the deepest place in the sea. Yes, robots have been there. Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution has created a wonderful machine that's been down a number of times. Japan had a robot for a while, got lost at sea, but they verified what Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard told us after they had come back, that there's life, not just at the surface, not just in that, what they call the Jacques Cousteau layer, where divers go down 150 feet or so, but all the way to the bottom. The ocean is alive. One of those whale sharks that Bob Huter showed us in a single gulp might take in more of the categories of animal life, the big broad categories, than occur on all of the land put together in a bucket full of water taken from the Sargasso Sea. In an expedition a couple of years ago, 15 phyla of animals were found in that bucket full of water in what looked like pretty clear open water, because the larval stages of many creatures are out there in the ocean. The ocean is alive. That's one of the discoveries that really has happened largely as a consequence of new technologies, the curiosity that drives human beings to explore. Now we know. Now we can understand the coupling between the atmosphere and the ocean and life. That this system, if it were just rocks and water, wouldn't be the system that we know and love as our home. Most of the oxygen that we breathe comes as a consequence of photosynthetic activity of little guys out there in the ocean. When I'm asked, and I am sometimes, one that really got to me in Australia, when I'm asked, why should I care about the ocean, that cartoon that you saw? Who cares that the ocean exists? It was a reporter from Sydney, Australia, who said, I don't swim, I get seasick, I don't like to eat fish, people don't drink water from the ocean, so if the ocean dried up tomorrow, what difference would it make to me? And I thought for a millisecond, and I said, well, okay, let's get rid of the ocean. What have you got? You've got a planet a lot like that beautiful red sister planet, Mars. Not a very hospitable place for the likes of us or the rest of life on Earth. Now, there's some people who are dreaming of terraforming Mars, of altering the nature of Mars so that it's greener, maybe bluer. Apparently, there was an ocean there once upon a time, not anymore. There may be water there, it seems there is. There's water in many places in the solar system and in the universe beyond, it appears, but nothing like the ocean that drives the way this planet works, shapes planetary chemistry, drives climate and weather, is the great thermoregulator and home for most of life on Earth. I was so glad to sit with you and have the illustrations of what it's like to be out on a coral reef. And David, when Gallo took you out on a little descent into a submersible into the sea, didn't quite convey the importance of getting into a little sub in that sunlit portion and going down until it just becomes completely dark, except it's not. The flash, the sparkle, the glow of little organisms. Maybe the most common form of communication on Earth is the bioluminescence that living creatures in the sea use to communicate with one another. Here's the thing. Most of life on Earth lives in the dark all of the time. You get below 1,000 feet, it's dark. 3,000 feet, the last traces of any semblance of sunlight, it disappears. Think of it. Here we are in Washington, D.C. You think people here live in the dark? Think about the ocean. How do they do it? And what difference does it make to us? Well, here's another answer. Do you like to breathe? Do you like the fact that water magically falls out of the sky? I mean, we take so much for granted. And yet, in the same period of time, since the middle of the 20th century, when we have learned more, not just about the ocean, not just about the life on Earth, not just about the stars in the sky, we've just accumulated a massive amount of new insight into the nature of some of the big questions. Ed Wilson at Harvard says the big questions. Where did we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? And here we are, at the beginning of the 21st century, armed with knowledge that none of our predecessors had about the importance to us of the natural world, of the ocean, where 97% of Earth's water actually is, where most of life on Earth actually is. We know things that were unknown, that could not have been able at that point to guide us because we were ignorant of factors such as that we have the capacity to actually consume ocean wildlife at a state where today we're looking at sharks with maybe 90% of most of the sharks gone in the last half century. Coral reefs declined in some measure. Some say maybe as much as half of the coral reefs are either gone or a state of serious decline. In the Caribbean, maybe 80% gone. On my watch, on your watch, since the middle of the 20th century, and the pace is picking up. The good news is, now we know. You can't solve a problem if you don't know you've got one. Well, listen up, because we do have a serious problem. Part of it is what we're putting into the ocean. Part of it is what we're taking out. Far and away, the biggest problem is complacency that comes from not knowing that the ocean matters, that the ocean is in trouble, and therefore we're in trouble. The good news is we now have means of communicating knowledge, information, to inspire people with the awareness that nature matters, that we have to make peace with those systems that we have demolished so effectively during the long history of humankind. Well, relatively speaking, the short history of humankind on a planet that's 4.5 billion years old. We have powers that are equivalent to geological forces in our ability to change the way the world works. But with all that said, the good news, I think, is that there is time, not a lot. The next 10 years may be the most important in the next 10,000 years. Now we know. That's the key. We have the capacity to pull ourselves out of this downhill slide in terms of what's happening to our life support system. We've invested mightily in what goes up in the sky, and it's paid off handsomely. We've been neglecting the ocean. It's costing us dearly. But there is time. We can mobilize our good minds. Think of all the creatures who share the planet with us who are kind of smart. Cats, dogs, horses, elephants, whatever. Even turtles. They've been around for a long time. Individual turtles may live to be 100 years. Some fish, like orange roughy, can live to be more than a century old. Some whales, too. They may know, as we know, that the world has changed and that the pace is picking up, but they don't know why, and they don't know what to do about it. We do. We know. And we do know what to do about it, and one answer is to do everything we can on our watch to protect the systems that keep us alive. Land, air, the fabric of life, and certainly the ocean. This is the time, as never before, to really use all of our powers, whatever they are. Everyone has power. Look in the mirror, see what you can do, and then use that power. As never again, we have a chance. Look at the record of what has been accomplished in a positive way during the last 50 years. And you might ask the question, as I heard asked recently at a big shipping conference, if we could go back 50 years armed with the knowledge that we now have, what would we do differently? The other question, think ahead 50 years. Imagine what we might have out there in a positive sense and a negative sense, whatever it is, whatever you can imagine. Our kids out there, our grandkids, looking back at us, what might they ask us to be doing now that we have a chance to do that they might not have a chance to do unless we take action now? With only 10% of the bluefin tuna or so, depends on how you count and where you count, but a fraction of what there was only 20 years ago. Will they be gone by the middle of the 20th century? Will there be coral reefs? Will there be whale sharks? We have a choice. It's pretty exciting. I tell kids it's the best time ever to be around because now we know, and it's not too late. So I'm looking at an audience full of kids because there's a kid inside of everyone. You just have to dust it off sometimes and think about the good news, the good things that are possible, because now we know. Thank you.